Hey, it's Shane with GotRom.com. I'm joined today by Nikki, the fabulous Nikki. And Nikki hiked about 13 point some odd miles yesterday and was complaining today that her back and her hip were a little sore and tight. And she wanted to know, I'm in the middle of nowhere, I don't have any of my mobility tools with me, so what the heck can I do? So we're going to show you a couple things today for how to deal with back tightness and also some side hip tightness. And before we get into the exercises for that, I want to explain why that can happen when you've got a big heavy bag on. So there's two things that you can do. One is, if Nikki keeps this really strapped tight, all of the weight's going to be on her shoulders, and that's going to put a lot of stress and fatigue on her shoulders. If she were to loosen these up and the bag kind of falls away from her, then she would have to lean forward, kind of arch a little bit, even though the weight is on her hips. Now the bag would be tighter on her hips, but she's kind of arching her back and then hiking for miles on end, and that can lead to some of this low back tightness. So you have to kind of adjust between how tight it is around your waist, how tight it is around your shoulders, and balance the stress between the hips and the shoulders in a way that works for you. So we'll have you go ahead and take the pack off, and then I'll show you what to do about a tight low back and tight hips from lots of hiking. Nikki's going to lay on her side facing this way. And the areas that we're talking about here are, we have your QL muscle, so her ribs are here, pelvis is here. In between there's a strap-like muscle called your quadratus lumborum, your QL. And now, if you have a friend who you trust who's got kind of a gentle touch, you can have them put an elbow kind of right in this little divot area and just hold the pressure. So I'll come around this side. So I can feel with my thumb, okay, here's her ribs, and then there's kind of this squishy middle area, and then I feel her hip bone right there. So I'm going to either press a thumb straight down in this direction and just kind of hold, and she's going to take some big breaths. Release. When I feel her release, I can actually feel the tissue soften up in there, and I press just a little bit harder. Then she takes a big breath, release, and exhale. You can also, if there's enough space between her ribs and her pelvis, which if you need to create more space, I can have her lift her arm up overhead, and that kind of widens this gap. And then I can lay an elbow in here, and it's a little broader. And then again, she takes a big breath and relaxes, and my elbow sinks in a little bit. I'm pressing, the vector is pressing down and ever so slightly towards her spine. If I was actually working on Nikki for a while here, I would be in constant communication with her about how's the pressure, because, you know, her spine is down here, so I don't want to press too intensely on this. So I'd be asking for feedback ongoingly. The other thing is, as you're hiking miles and miles and miles, the lateral hip muscles and the deep hip rotators can get tight. And so similarly, you can work on these and kind of release them with a little bit of pressure. And how you do that is, again, you kind of palpate with your thumb, and you look for, okay, there's a feeling of there's a bone. Just kind of lateral of that bone, there's more of kind of squishy hip tissue. And what you can do is just kind of sink your elbow into that. She's going to have to lean into me just a tad, and we kind of meet each other, and then I just lean into her. She takes a big breath, she exhales, I feel it sink in a little bit more. One way to prevent her from sliding, if you could have like something supporting her here so that when I push on her, she doesn't slide over that way, and then there she can relax a little bit more, that can be helpful. But if you'll have someone just kind of press on the lateral hip, on the squishy tissue, not on the bone, and press on your QL muscle if you're feeling tight in this lateral chain, that can relieve a lot of hip pain, hip tightness that you're having, and a lot of low back pain and low back tightness that you're having. So give those two exercises a shot, see how they go for you, and we'll see you in the next video.
Yeah.